Now look, I like big books and I cannot lie, but every once in a while, I need something a smidge smaller. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with yet another recommendation video for you because I was thinking of some things that have been going on around the channel lately. I'm kind of taking a sabbatical from some thick books. I did read some earlier this year that kind of like burned me out a little bit to where I said I need some quick, easy, fast-paced series, I think, maybe to get through, or just some shorter books. And I said, I'm reading this saga, Forgotten Warrior, right now by Larry Correia. And I'm like, these books are all under 500 pages. They're very fast-paced. And I feel like I could find some more things like that to recommend to people who've also been telling me, yes, Mike, I too am tired of the giant, massive fantasy books that have been really dragging me down. Now, look, I'm an epic fantasy fan. I do love thick books, and I will get back to them again one day for sure. I'm just kind of taking a break from them right now while I kind of recharge the batteries a little bit. And I had a lot of people ask me, well, what are you kind of looking for? Or what would you recommend if I'm feeling similarly? And I said, I happen to have several here. So there are some series and there are some books here, some standalones, but these are all, less than 500 pages. Move pretty quick. I feel like they're series you can get through really easily, or just some standalones, because I love a standalone. Obviously, there's no real commitment. Let's kick it off, guys, by talking about one of my favorite series of all time. That, of course, is The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This is going to be my number one answer anytime someone says, I don't mind if it's a series, because look, this is a series. This is a series. I'll get to that in a second. But I don't mind a series that has a lot of books as long as they're quick and I'm having a good time with them. There is no better explanation for what The Dresden Files is than that right there. These books, yes, there is a lot of them. They're almost all of them. I think towards the end, you do get a couple that might go over like 500 pages. But guys, these are quick reads, lightning quick plots. They can really be treated like standalones too. That's what I appreciate. Now, there is an overarching narrative and connections that go from book to book, because you are dealing with one character and like the worst day of his life each year. That's kind of what these books are. And I read all of them that were currently released. I read all of them in just under a year, guys, and that's when I was treating them as a palate cleanser. I was reading Wheel of Time. I was reading several other long epic fantasy series. I said I need kind of a palate cleanser between those, and Dresden Files was it. I recommend that. But if you're just looking to get into some quick reads, I think if you're reading this series and just this series alone, you can probably fly through it really quick. And I have been told ad nauseum that the audiobooks, which I don't do, the audiobooks apparently are very good. So if that's something that you're interested in, I think this could be the series that you have been looking for. But I'll always champion Dresden Files, guys, because it's just so much fun, so enjoyable, but it is actually one of those rare series where each book does get better than the previous one. It's amazing how he's able to do that. But yeah, great series. Cannot wait for it to come back. Now, for next up here, one that I actually talked about on the channel recently is the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Another one that, look, if you want the breakdown of what the series is about, I just did a video the other day about how if you're looking for all these things that Star Wars used to be, that you grew up with, that you love, it's all still here in the expanded universe. And yeah, Disney might have decanonized it, but for people like us that really miss the way that we were, I think you'll find that you prefer these to what they're doing on the big screen right now. Now, except for like one or two books in the New Jedi Order, I think all these really are below 350, 400 pages. They're really quick. They get to the point, and some are slower than others, but I do feel like it's mostly just galactic space opera adventure, the stuff that you love and appreciate about Star Wars. Now, there are, the politics and the backroom dealings and things like that, and the seedy underworlds, but it's in that galaxy far away that you're going to feel like, okay, well, I like these things. And if you've seen the original trilogy, the best thing about it, guys, you kind of know the rules. You know how things work in Star Wars. It doesn't very much try to reinvent the wheel very much on some things that make Star Wars what it is. And I think that just makes it just so easy to slip into. And again, they are very quick reads. Yes, there are tons of them. There are several reading orders. There's a little bit something for everyone there. But I feel like each one of these are like a trilogy or 4 books or something like that. Or you get that rare occasion like the New Jedi Order where there are a lot of standalones, but it was 17 books. So there's something there, I think, for everyone. I've done so many different videos on the channel about the EU and the reading order and the way that I would recommend it, where you should start with it. All those questions I do ask on the channel. But again, this is another one of those I'm always going to be just a huge advocate for, because these got me through a time in my life where I remembered how much I love Star Wars because these books kept alive for me for so long. And revisiting some of them, I would love to do more than I have. But I revisited the Thrawn trilogy a couple years back, and still fabulous. And I hope that some people we'll pick them up for the first time if you haven't. Or, hey, you know what? If you're really, really dissatisfied, just revisit them. I think that could be something really, really fun. Next, I'm going to kind of deal with a little bit of standalone-ish stuff here, but I'm talking about the works of Michael Crichton and Blake Crouch. You guys, if you follow the channel, you know I am a big fan of both of these authors. This is my second favorite author of all time, behind only Stephen King, and Blake Crouch is probably like one of my favorite contemporary authors going today. It's very much the gold standard of the techno thriller. Now, if you don't know what techno thriller is, it usually deals with some form of human advancement or technology, some kind of technological advancement. We're just right there. It's just right around the corner. You can see it as something that's possible, but they always ask the moral question of, should we be playing God? Should we be doing this stuff? Is it a good idea? Now, obviously, if you've read Jurassic Park or you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about there. We can, but should we? And I think those are always things that are going to be easy to get through, but I love that all their books are super fast-paced, just adrenaline rushes. All of them under 500 pages. You're going to get through these in a night or two because they just keep going, and they never really slow down to a point to where you feel like, oh, well, I'm getting kind of bored. Some of you might have seen the Dark Matter TV series that just came out. Yeah, that's a great adaptation, and you see it's just how fast-paced that story can be, and you just will zip right through them, and you'll just love them. So I feel like, again, you're wanting a break from something really, really heavy, something really, really complicated. You got a smaller cast usually. You're dealing with something that's kind of in a not really a lot of bouncing around the globe or anything. You're usually on Earth, obviously, and it's usually just like in a disclosed area. And I think that it can help you get through some things because you don't have to do a ton of world building when it comes to the planet Earth. Usually, most things there, unless you learn some history, like timeline might get a little out there for you. But I think that the ideas that both those gentlemen present will keep you kind of guessing along the way and being like, this is something that feels kind of scary because it's possible. And I think that's what keeps their books just so exciting, because you don't know what is coming next. Another one, if there was a traditional fantasy kind of counterpart to the Dresden Files, I would have to say it's Legend of Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore. Now, this is one of those where people are going to be like, oh yeah, I read that like in junior high or whatever. I don't go against things like that. YA stuff, traditional fantasy stuff, 90s fantasy stuff, things that you would consider like easy once you're a major epic fantasy reader. If you're tired of reading books that are like this, I think these are wonderful, guys, because these are all like 350 pages. They're 2 to 3 day reads, I think, at most. I mean, even the most beginning of a reader can get through these in a few days. I think that it's incredibly fast paced. You will love the whole cast, and it has all those greatest hits of fantasy without feeling like you've got to go and research and learn a lot of things. Especially if you play D&D, you know a lot of these things. But you've got your elves, you've got your wizards, you've got your dwarves, all those things that we know and love about the genre. They're all here, and it doesn't try to reinvent the wheel on those things. I think that's what makes it really, really charming and easy to get through. I love these books, and I get through them really, really quick. I read them like a trilogy at a time. And now, look, yes, there are a ton of Drizzt books. I know a lot of people are like, it's got like 40-something books. I'm not starting that. I said the same thing until I realized it's like what Robin Hobb did with Realm of the Eldlings. Trilogy, 4-book. Trilogy. That's kind of what it does all the way, and you can stop in those places, and you can kind of do other things if you want to. So I would say these are standalone-ish as much as they are, trilogies, things like that. But the thing is those trilogies, all 3 of them together are usually shorter than, a Brandon Sanderson book. So there's that. If that's what you're kind of looking for, again, you're tired of the big books, you're wanting something a little more fast-paced, a little more adventure, I think you're going to get that with Drizzt. And obviously, ℓ𝕬𝕤𝕤 is a legend in the fantasy community, and R.A. Salvatore is very much fantasy royalty, I think, at this point. And it is deserved because those books are just a ton of fun. Next, I'll have like a particular book in mind really to tell you about, but I gotta say standalone horror. I think standalone horror because most horror is going to be anthology or standalone. There's not a ton of, whereas it seems like most fantasy, there's not very many standalones. Horror, I don't feel like there's a ton of series. It's usually standalone book, single event, smaller cast, less time spent on world building, usually a rapid pace and less than 400 pages. That's why I'll always recommend, now if you aren't into horror, obviously that's something that you really can't really get past. Thankfully, there are different stages of horror. There's, there's serial killers, there's cold cases, whatever, more so than just the scary supernatural monsters and stuff. There are very different levels of horror, so I think you can get anything that you're really interested into, because I would put like crime, detective, chasing a serial killer or something like that. Those get put into horror a lot too. But again, those types of stories will be something I feel like is a lot easier to digest because they are, again, smaller cast and very small page count. And again, it's one and done usually, so it's not a huge commitment to kind of really get into it. One that I've really been into lately is Nick Cutter. I read The Troop, and I read Little Heaven. I'll be reading The Deep later this year. It's an author I'm really, really digging. I read Ronald Malfi for the first time this year with Come With Me. So I think that's a couple of new ones I've really gotten into, and I'm trying to expand my own horizons on the horror genre besides just Stephen King. And it's really easy and fun to do, and that list just keeps growing and growing, because there is so many just one-offs, and they're all really short, and they look like they can be something that's not a heavy commitment. And again, when you're really, really struggling with those thick books, I think that's a good way to go, as is classics and short story collections. Now, with classics, obviously, you're going to have a lot of those things. There are some tomes out there. You don't have to look too hard to find some of those tomes, but most of those are rather short. They're to the point, and they're classics for a reason. For me, I'm going to recommend some short stories here. Obviously, guys, I talked about them. They were both on my top 10 authors of all time: H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard. So you get like these complete collections, these short stories. And again, these things are like 15, 25 pages, and these two gentlemen will spin a yarn like you can't believe in that page count. They do so much with such little page count, and building ambiance and building their world, that you cannot believe how much detail is in such a quick little format. So I always will recommend people dive into these if you're struggling with the length of some novels and things that you're dealing with. And either one. I mean, you're wanting some horror, go with Lovecraft. You're wanting some true original, I would say original fantasy, but obviously sword and sorcery. This is it, man. You're wanting wizards and swords and things like that. Conan's it. I mean, Conan is a gold standard for a reason. But yeah, I'll always recommend you pick up some of those short stories if you're struggling, because obviously, I mean, you can do these in one sitting, clearly, and you're going to get so much out of them because they are just so well written. Both of them could do so much with so little, and that's what made them both some of my favorite authors. So definitely like to pick that up. And I like that classics, just really, you aren't bound to any one real genre. There's so many things about classics. It's just such a wide field. It isn't. We're not just talking about fantasy here, not just talking about horror here. There's all kinds of different things you can get into, and I feel like you can get through them a little bit faster than you can some of these big tomes, obviously. But I think that they're usually focused on smaller groups and stuff too. So if you're not looking for the big, huge, epic cast and locations and stuff, it can help you really kind of process some of these things a little quicker. But most big-time classics are standalones, and they require less commitment. That's always going to be something that I would recommend. There's a couple that I would recommend, but they don't really kind of meet the criteria I listed at the beginning of this, where I said, less than 500 pages and super fast paced. Now look, Harry Potter is always going to be one that I recommend to people. I don't care what age you are with Harry Potter. It's like I've seen people that were preteen love it just as much as 50-year-old men reading it for the first time. And they say, well, I really just thought this was like a kid's thing, and they read it and they're blown away by it. They're obsessed with it. And again, everyone thinks that until they read it, and then they're just like completely floored, and they say, I understand why this is so beloved. So I'll always recommend that. But look, after about book 3, all those books are over 500 pages. Now, they read super, super fast because they are, middle grade reading level, I think. And I think you'll be able to get through them rather quick, but they do get more and more complex as they go along, as the series kind of grew with its readers. And I think that's one that would be a great way for you to kind of say, look, I'm still reading maybe some thicker books, but, I'm reading them a little faster. But that's why I didn't really put it on here. Stephen King, I'm obviously going to mention him, but however, Stephen King's page count most times is over 500 pages, so I wouldn't really necessarily say that. But, if you want to dip into some of those under 500-page stories, there's plenty of them out there for you. And then I'm one of those, like, I get this tag as like, I hate the young adult genre, and I don't. I hate a lot of young adult tropes, especially in fantasy, but there are several series out there that I do recommend. If you've got kids, read Percy Jackson with them, either side by side or read it out loud to them. Percy Jackson is something I do with my oldest son, and it was such a fun time and a great bonding experience. I really think Maze Runner is a very, very underrated series. Ark of a Scythe, I like that first book, and then it kind of went downhill. But yeah, Maze Runner is still really, really phenomenal. But I'm just saying that I will check out some of these series that are considered true young adult. And I think that that's something that's going to be easy for anyone, with a reading level that's been reading epic fantasy. It's going to seem like a break to you. But, I say sometimes it's okay to have a little bit of popcorn and candy when you're not wanting steak and potatoes for once. It's okay to have that. Not everything has to be some epic event. I feel like that's just like with a lot of the TV I see now. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's not as good as Breaking Bad or The Sopranos. But not everything has to be Emmy Award television. Sometimes you just want to watch some bubblegum, right? At least that's how I feel, and I feel like that does apply to books as well. So if you are struggling with some of those overly long books that kind of drag on and on for 200 pages, giving you history lessons about how the magic works or how the land was first created, and you need a little bit of a break. I think any of these series are going to work really well for you. I just had mentioned I'm reading Saga of the Forgotten Warrior right now by Larry Correia, and if it's possible to make a fantasy series into a thriller, he has found that magic formula, and I highly recommend that. But guys, I would love to know some of your recommendations. Are you, or have you ever taken a sabbatical of some sort from those big, thick, epic fantasy books? I'm sure we've all been there before. We've all needed a break a little bit, and I think a way to break that up and reduce burnout is to switch genres, obviously, but go to some things that are quicker paced, or maybe they are just standalone. I think that's always something that's going to help you out. And don't be afraid to turn the clock back. I know a lot of people, they see classics and they're like, no, it's really a good idea to go back and read some of these pillars of what have kind of built up all these genres that we do love, and seeing kind of how they were 100, 200 years ago. It's really a fun journey, and I think it can only broaden your horizons on what is great literature. So guys, that's what I have. I'd love to know some of your recommendations, or if you have any feedback on any of these, I'd love to know what you think. So drop in the comments, guys, let me know, and I will talk to you there.